Great. Let's start. Excellent. So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining this session. Like I mentioned, on embedding circularity into product as a service offering. This webinar is organized by the SET Alliance, which is an alliance managed and founded by Bayes, which I will share a couple of words afterwards. But before doing that, let's jump just into some housing rules. So I imagine a lot of you are familiar with Zoom. So during the session, you will be able to ask questions to our speakers, to our guest speakers today. You can do that preferably through the Q&A little tab that you see here on my screen. Or if you're confused, you can also drop it in the chat and we will filter it on our side. After the session, you will have the opportunity also through a QR code to share your opinion on this session. So we organize a very quick survey that takes about 2 minutes to fill, and we would highly appreciate that to be able to improve future sessions. And then we invite you to follow us as well on LinkedIn to hear news about the SET Alliance, the case studies, the articles, and the future webinars that we have. And of course, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us on info@setalliance.org. And I haven't mentioned it, but on the website, you will also be able to access the recordings of this session, along with recordings of prior webinars and case studies and articles. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our valuable guest speakers today. So I'll first hand over to Ton van de Wiel from Signify. Ton, welcome.
You're muted, Ton.
Sorry for that. So warm welcome also from my end, and thanks for having us here, Dimitris, in this great webinar. Yeah, I'm Ton van de Wiel, working for Signify, and in the lead of the industry segment, which covers industry and warehousing, but more about that later on. So stay tuned.
Great, many thanks, Ton. And we will also have Morten Stensli, who's joining us today from Norway. Morten, please.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm Morten Stensli, and I'm the CEO of Anja Retail Norway and the CTO of the Anja Retail Group. And we do refrigeration as a service, or we also call it energy as a service, because we also give energy guarantees to retailers. So that I will talk more about later.
Great, many thanks, and thanks to both of you for taking the time today to share your insights on this model that you're bringing to the market and how you're embedding also circularity within your activities. So without further ado, I'll jump with a couple of slides from my side first. So for everybody to know, my name is Dimitris Karamitsos. I work for the Basel Agency for Sustainable Energy. We are a non-profit, and we were founded about 23 years ago by the Swiss government, the city of Basel, and we are a specialized collaborative center of the UN Environment Programme. And we focus actually on designing innovative business models and financial strategies that de-risk investments in energy efficiency, renewable energy, and climate impact solutions, including circular economy. So here, I will actually present a couple of slides on a project we started and that is funded with the support of the Circular Building Coalition, which is really to understand how can we embed circularity into product as a service offerings. And this project was split into 2 stages. The first one was the design of a white paper to really understand what are the needs and the gaps in the market. And stage 2 of the project would be to actually design the work on how to embed circularity into PaaS offerings. So first thing first, why did we look into this topic? So for the audience to know, and some of those figures you're probably familiar with, energy demand is projected to increase by 50% by 2050. Now, what we know as well is that renewable energy and energy efficiency can offer about 90% of mitigations measures to reduce emissions, and energy efficiency alone can drive 35% of the cumulative CO2 savings by 2050. In addition to that, we know that circular economy could reduce global greenhouse gas emissions by 39% by 2050 compared to our more standard linear economic model. So this is all great, but also we know that it will require substantial investments worldwide. So the value is about 2.4 trillion annual US dollars of global investments to stay below the 1.5 degree threshold, which we know we already actually passed, unfortunately. So even though there is a lot of investment requirement and the benefits of going in this direction seems very apparent, what we see in the market is that unfortunately, a lot of players are adapting kind of more well-known solutions on the market, and they don't go with state-of-the-art systems and also systems that enable kind of a circular economy approach. So the big question is, how do we transition this curve to being skewed to the left instead of to the right? So what we see a little bit is that market barriers that occur across sectors are coming often the same, which are the upfront investment requirement, which typically for a system that is state of the art or that is new in the market is higher. There are performance uncertainties with those systems, which as an investor, as a customer, we tend to think, okay, what is going to be my return on investment on those solutions? So we tend not to go with the hassle of those investments and rather go with systems that have a lot of data available on the market. But of course, also like how do we embed circularity into systems on which we are not the experts from? So this requires massive investments and expertise from the customer side, which very often is not the priority. And so there are kind of priority clashes within firms that drive rather investments into their core activities as a business. So we see as Base a huge opportunity and a solution in the market to approach this problem with as a service solutions. So this is not a new model. We know that it has been applied to other sectors. So for instance, in the printing sector, companies like Xerox enabled really for customers not to buy anymore the printing machines, but to pay per amount of paper that they print. But also it enabled for the solar sector to really scale across geographies with solar PPAs. And so we see really that there is a massive opportunity for systems that consume a lot of energy inside the building sector, namely lighting, cooling, heating, compressed air, but also energy storage, to drive decarbonization on the market in a more fair manner between the stakeholders. So very briefly, what is kind of the advantages, and I won't go in detail into that because I think Morten and Ton will also mention those. But the key aspect is that for the customers, it means that they can really bypass the risk of investing into technologies that they're unsure of, but also sometimes aspects that are underlined by the customer is actually the time that they spend to try and maintain those systems or to upgrade them in the right manner, etc. It requires really expertise in-house, which is often not available. Or let's say, because technologies is evolving so quickly, it's hard to get in-house. So here really for customers, the benefit is to build a partnership with those suppliers, to build trust so that the best solutions are embedded into their operations. For technology providers is really to drive systemic energy efficiency onto the systems that they have on site. And for banks is to actually invest into projects that are real green projects, but also where there is a traceability of what is the impact actually that those projects bring forward. So in that, why does the model actually incentivize circularity? What we see, and I'll be very brief on that, is on the classic kind of linear model. We see it here on the left. A system is sold to a customer, and then the provider is kind of incentivized to drive revenues by selling spare parts to that customer until the asset, let's say, it doesn't have enough value anymore, and then there is a destruction of the value of the asset. when we think about circular economy, actually there is value throughout the life cycle of the asset to keep optimizing, to keep maintaining the asset at the top of its operating point, and therefore to extend the life cycle as well of that asset. So you see actually here, recycle is really the last item on the, let's say, on the agenda of circular economy. Before that, you have a lot of activities that allow to extend the life cycle of an asset. However, what we know as well is that there are bottlenecks to implement this approach. And what are those bottlenecks? They are, for instance, the contracts between the stakeholders that are active in deploying a product as a service on site. So meaning the contract between the sub-suppliers, of course, the customer, but also the financiers. And there are financial structures that incentivize a rather positive movement towards circular economy and others that are more rigid towards this direction. And so I invite actually people to read about this topic and to read also our elaborations on the white paper that we wrote about that topic. Unfortunately, going into product as a service doesn't mean automatically we're going into circularity. So we have an example here, for instance, we all know in our cities, they were flooded by e-bikes and e-trottinettes. They were an ecological disaster in our cities, and actually the government had to very often interfere in those. So it doesn't mean that automatically if you go on product as a service, you're going to be circular. However, there is hope, and we will see this today in the presentations that we have also with Don and Morten. And here you have the example of a company based in Singapore, and this particular project is in India, in Pune, with Care deploying cooling as a service on site of a customer. And that company kept ownership of that system, and as well managed to actually overcome the level of energy efficiency gains that was planned by that project initially. So I won't go into detail into those, but we have actually case studies that you can go through and read about them. But what is key actually in those projects that we've been analyzing is again kind of the contracts between the stakeholders and how those were designed to enable a circular economy. So we see, for instance, here you have the product as a service provider, you have a contract with the customers, of course, a contract with the financier, a contract with the sub-suppliers, and the recycler. And so in each of those contracts, you have particular clauses that incentivize the deployment of a circular economy. Of course, contracts are not the only aspect to drive energy efficiency. There are also others. And this is what we see. I'll jump through this slide, but through the analysis we've done, through interviews with about 30 companies we've done on the market, what are some of the clauses that drive energy efficiency and circularity within product as a service offerings? But also what are some of the gaps in the market and what are some of the enablers that drive circularity? So for instance, one of the strong enablers is digitalization, which allows to really track how an asset is performing and how it is degrading. And one important aspect there again is if you deploy digitalization with your customer, you need to have an engagement with your customer that allows for data security sharing and a usage of the data that is going to drive circularity. So I'll be very brief on the next slide to give actually more time to our speakers. But what is available today on the work that we've done? So we do have some standardized contracts that are available to be used that actually embed some of the aspects of circularity within. Also some pricing models and risk management tools, but very importantly, we've designed a first white paper that we invite the audience to go through, and we remain available for any questions that you have. And so what will be the next steps into this project? We will actually invite stakeholders for conversations to better understand how we can design those contractual guidelines to really drive circular economy. So if we have time at the end of the session, I'll mention a few words on that, but enough spoken on my side. I would like to hand over to Ton from Signify to share some insights on the work that they're doing. Ton, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dimitris, for making this great introduction. And let me share the screen. Let's see. Okay, I hope you can all see the screen now. Does that work, Dimitris?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. So again, welcome all that have joined the webinar. I'm Tom van Wiel from Signify, and I will take the next 15 minutes to talk about our Light as a Service offering, but I want to go beyond that topic to also introduce connectivity as well as circularity. I have about 15 slides, so you can keep track of my progress if you keep an eye on the slide number in the bottom left. And I hope it will be entertaining for you, of course. So to start off with the company that I represent, Signify. Maybe some of you, for some of you, it's still a new name. It used to be Philips Lighting in the past, so I guess that will ring a bell. And we are in the business, obviously, of different lighting products or light sources, luminaires, systems and services. And especially on that last element, systems and services, that's where we make a link to today's webinar, because that is the business where we also offer the Light as a Service business model. You also see a couple of brands. So the Philips brand is still very much in use. You see that back on our lamps and luminaires. But when it comes to connectivity, when it comes to software, you see us applying a different brand, which is Interact. Just a bit more about the company that I represent, and linking to the topic of sustainability. Yeah, be assured that we are very ambitious when it comes to driving sustainability. We do it ourselves, of course. So we practice what we preach, but we also try to enable our customers to become, let's say, climate neutral. And when I talk about ambition, we even have in mind to double the pace of the Paris Agreement, which basically means that instead of taking so many years to reach the 1.5 scenario, we want to do that halfway down the road. We call that program Brighter Lives, Better World, and especially the Better World part, as you can see, is completely geared towards that topic. Yeah, so why do our customers appreciate Light as a Service in the first place? Well, this is an offering that we have already for quite some time. And in all honesty, it started mostly as a way to take care of barriers on financing, but I'll get back on that later on. So let's start with why people are interested in this in the first place. Well, you need to understand that being in the lighting industry, we bring first and foremost environments that are productive and safe, because that is the reason why you need light in the first place. And I hope the picture also resonates that a bit, that by having good lighting, by having good lighting quality, you can do your work at the right standards. But unfortunately, in a lot of situations, this is not completely in place yet, right? So looking at this picture, which is not a picture we seldomly see, this is something we see in many situations. Industrial facilities don't necessarily have the right setup already. They use still conventional lighting that is very energy consuming, and it also doesn't necessarily provide the best lighting conditions, right? So there's a lot of shadow, you have skylights, you have bright sources in the ceiling. So to cut a long story short, this is not necessarily the best lighting condition. And of course, we can help customers to bring it to the right level. However, those customers, and then if I talk about customers, they're mostly in real estate, sometimes in facility management or maintenance. They do understand this story, right? They fully understand the impact of lighting on productivity and safety. But we all face the trouble of time and being resource constrained. So they have little time of organizing stuff. And even if they make the ROI calculation, it typically proves that lighting is a good invest. But in all honesty, there's always this other investment, maybe in machinery in the core business, that has an even better picture. So we sometimes have trouble getting in the priority list of capex investments. And at the same time, these people that are not necessarily known with lighting, they're not necessarily experts. They also don't want to have surprises, right? So systems that come with maybe new stuff to them that is kind of frightening a bit. So they don't want to have any surprises and don't want to take too much risk. So that's in a way where light as a service comes in. We want to take away all those concerns, all those barriers. The key thing, the key characteristic of light as a service, as we all know, is moving from the ownership to use. And basically, the whole setup is such that the energy saving can pay for the service fee. I'm not sure if I can use a pointer here. I'll just try to bring it in to the screen. Let me see if there's a pointer that I can use. Sorry. There should be, yeah, here it is. So if you look at the screen on the right, this is just a typical example of what the current spend could be of your lighting install, right? So assume that would be 100,000 euros a year. Then the light as a service deal is really about reducing that substantially. So you can reduce that towards a level of 40,000, saving 60% of energy. And with that, you kind of pay for the service fee that is linked to the light as a service deal. And bottom line, you end up having instant savings. So the 10K saving that you see here is a saving you will have from day one. And that is especially appealing to our customers. So no upfront investment, instant savings, and after the contract, you will continue to benefit from the nice lighting install. Other than bringing those savings, we also agree on business outcomes, right? So this is not just about driving down the energy cost. It's also about ensuring that you will have good light conditions across the term of the contract, which means light levels, uptime, all of that. And the approach to getting stuff in place is by first having an audit phase. We plan, we design, we build, we check, and we start operating on behalf of our customer. And over time, we maintain and optimize where possible. So to cut a long story short, that light as a service model basically brings our customer a bit of peace of mind. They will have assurance of the right performance, of the right lighting conditions. They will have immediate cost savings because, again, the energy saving is big enough to cover the light as a service fee and even brings instant savings. And again, as I stressed in the beginning, having good light conditions will ensure to have a safer and more productive environment. We have many of these solutions already installed, especially across European manufacturers like Nexans. Nexans also recently shared a nice post on this. If you are interested, you can find that case study back following this link. But they are saving dramatically around their 12 sites in Europe, reducing the CO2 footprint, of course, but also again stressing that once more, improving on their safety and working conditions. Okay, so that is, let's say, LaaS as we used to know it already years back. let's try to bring in some other things. So connectivity and the circular approach. Since a couple of years, we have an offering that is branded Interact, as I mentioned before. And with Interact, you can easily manage, monitor, and maintain a lighting install from any place on the globe. And that helps, of course, in order to report, because if you have a deal like this, you would like to show to your stakeholders internally that that deal is paying off. But you also need to report in the context of ESG or CSRD, right? So reporting becomes increasingly a topic of sustainability managers. But other than reporting, if you have the ability to see what's going on, you can also start optimizing. So, and that links also a bit to the circular approach. While being in the use phase, you can optimize, you can tune light settings such that you even save more. Yeah, light asset management is a very important topic. Looking at this nice dashboard on the left, by being connected, you can also check what is failing, if there's anything failing, and you know exactly what to do about it. So, for instance, when it comes to emergency lighting, that is something that needs to be tested every single month, every year. If there is a failure, you get informed about that, and you can do a first time right fix in that facility. Yeah, let's move on. So we are also, of course, jumping into the opportunity of circularity. Circularity for products, services, and systems, but all, of course, meant to preserve the value of the system that is deployed, and to avoid waste, and to, let's say, limit as far as possible the waste to landfill. Okay, circular products. To give a few examples, we also have a different way of creating our luminaires. We use 3D printing, and that has a big advantage because we can use, in fact, recycled materials from fishing nets. We design our products such that they will have a long lifetime. That's also in our interest, right? If we accommodate for a light as a service contract. Other than that, we also make sure that they are designed in such a way that we can easily repair, that we can easily remanufacture, refurbish. So that all comes back to the circularity of products. Services, yet another thing. Of course, light as a service, we already talked about that, but also think about remanufacturing service, which basically means that we take back certain luminaires, we bring them back to our factory, we take them apart and reuse certain bits and pieces, like the body of a luminaire, and then we can bring that back into the field. Last but not least, connected systems. I already spoke about that a bit, which is there to optimize the energy bill even during the use phase. It helps to drive down the time that you need to manage your lighting system. And you can make informed decisions at the end of the life. Okay, so to summarize, I believe LaaS, when combined with connectivity, when combined with a circular approach, you arrive at the best combination for managing sustainability. LaaS typically takes away a number of headwinds, a number of barriers. We focus a lot on the finance and procurement community, typically. And that's about financial benefits. But when you bring connectivity into the game, yeah, it basically allows you to stay tuned to what is there in the field, right? You know what is out there, you know the operating lifetime, you know the use, and you can start proactively making sure that when you reach the end of the life, that you can deal with things like remanufacturing. What is important to note is that when you make stuff connected, you need to deal with people in IT. They are important stakeholders, so better to bring them in quite soon in the process. And they may have concerns about data security and privacy that you need to overcome, of course. And then the last bit, the circular approach. Of course, with that we optimize the use of the scarce resources and avoid the waste. And it's important to note there that the important stakeholder is the ecosystem, but even more important, us as manufacturers, right? We need to ensure that there is a way to deal with that by having return flows managed well, by having a second-hand market if possible. So we take up that responsibility. And with that, I believe I've reached the 15th slide. So that was my promise at the beginning. Thanks for listening, and maybe there are already some questions that I can answer.
Yes, super. Many thanks, Don, for that. And actually, there is an interesting question from Atia Shah. Many thanks, Atia, for sharing that question. I'll read it out loud for you. So the question is a 10% reduction in OPEX exciting enough for customers to adopt lighting as a service? Also, do you guarantee the savings on electricity costs?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think even though maybe the 10% doesn't sound like an interesting reduction, it has been very interesting for many of our accounts, like the one I showed, Nexans, but there are more companies like Arcelor, like Air Liquide, like Michelin, like AB InBev. So apparently for these accounts, it has been very appealing. When it comes to guarantees, we bring in indeed the guarantee on certain business outcomes. And when it comes to energy, we guarantee a certain installed power. So typically driving down a conventional power of, let's say, 400 watts down to roughly 150 watts. And that is something we guarantee. And with that, people will get the saving, and they don't need to be concerned about the fact whether that will be delivered or not.
Super, thanks, Don. And we'll have the time now for a second one, and then we'll jump on the presentation of Morten. The second question is from Jan Agri. Would you say that you apply a modular product architecture in order to make repair and refurbishment easier?
Yes, absolutely. So that is part of the design rules that we apply to our product managers. So I have, for instance, an example of a what we call a high bay luminaire that consists of an aluminium body. It has optics, it has the light engine, it has a few other parts. And in close collaboration with our customers like Rolls-Royce, we make an agreement on taking back the old stuff. We bring it into our factory, we dismantle, we can unscrew stuff. So we prevent, for instance, things that are glued. And with that, we can bring something which is almost new, or sometimes even better than new, because the LED technology has progressed as well. We can bring that back from a donor site to a destination site within that same company.
Great, many thanks, Don. Given I know time is running by quickly, so we'll jump onto the next topic presented by Morten. So many thanks, Don, for your presentation. Morten, the screen is yours.
Okay. Then I have the full screen, I hope.
Yes.
Good, good. Okay, hello everyone. We have something we call energy as a service, which we offer for supermarkets in the Nordics. I'm going to talk more about that a bit. I want to have a few words around Aneo. Aneo, that's a fairly new company. It was actually founded last year. So it's the first company in the Nordics which actually are a governmental energy company and venture capital fund owned. So we are 50% privately owned, have 2 billion euros in growth capital, 400 employees, and today we have around 7 terawatt hours of energy production, mostly from wind and hydro. And Aneo is formed to do environmental friendly energy, to do electrification and also to do energy reduction setups. And that's where all these energy as a service companies has been evolved. We are the largest company for e-vehicles charging, and I then represent Aneo Retail, and we have other energy as a service companies also. And why is Aneo set up the way we are? That's because the grid is changing. There is a lot of possibilities now in the, let's say, the future grid to the right, where with solar panels, with digitalization, everything is connected. We can do a lot of different things, which creates value. And those values Aneo want to enhance by being the producer of energy, by being the actors of electrification, and also to be a part of to reduce the energy use. Aneo Retail also have a third party, which is on the owner side, that is Danfoss, which is at least for the retail part, a big producer of components in refrigerated cabinets, for instance. So that's the, let's say, the setup of Aneo Retail. We have been doing this as a service concept since 2017, and we are now 30 employees with offices in Norway, Stockholm, and Aarhus. So, and we have also now arranged so we can offer this in Finland, so we can now offer our services in the entire Nordics. And we have set up to do, we have different as a service concepts. And we have, our ambition is to move this concept to 4,000 stores. Today we have 550 contracts, so we are still have a far way to go, but we see with the rising of the energy prices, we have been a lot more activity around our services. We have a goal to reduce the energy costs for the customer by 25%, to have 500 gigawatts of energy which will be flexible, which means that we can actually use the energy when it's available, let's say when it's blowing or when the sun is shining. And we also want to be a part of to reduce the food retailers' emissions by 1 million tons of CO2. That mainly comes from changing out all F-gas refrigeration systems to new with natural refrigerants, but also comes from a major energy reduction. And why are as a service products become more and more relevant for food retailers? It's because of the energy price that has increased in Europe. The high inflation, money has become more expensive, so different models related to capex as ton is one of the buying criteria. Also, the new regulations related to refrigerants. There are new rules stating on from 2027 and also 2030, which many retailers have problems to actually fit their stores through new regulations. But also the labor and the knowledge around technical systems in the store, because this becomes much more complicated than what it was 20 years ago. Do you have it indoors? Do you have, even if you have managed to get, let's say, contractors with the relevant expertise, you still need to have it indoors if you do it yourself, which is the traditional way. Aneo Retail has 5 segments of expertise. Refrigeration, which of course are the major source of energy in the stores, and also the most important, because food safety is the most important part in a food store. Ventilation, heating, climate control in the store, and also now we see a lot of solar panels or local energy production in and around the stores. So we bundle that expertise and then come with as a service offerings, which takes part of the entire technical setup of a food retail store. That means that we can do the project and the remodeling of new stores or the rebuilding of stores. So we will take care of the entire purchasing and installation phase of a new refrigeration system, of a ventilation system, heating. It can also have lighting. We see that also as a big part of the energy savings for the retailers. After the stores are rebuilt, or even if we take over an existing store, we do the operation and we do the remote monitoring. All our stores are connected. That means that we can see 40,000 parameters on every store we have. We also have now many stores connected with what we call energy in real time, meaning that we only have a lag of 3 seconds. So we can really see the in real time energy use. And then comes the financing, which we take a part of, and also then the guarantees we give, because that's important. If we say that if you go with as a service model, we can offer a 20% reduction in energy reduction, we actually give that guarantee on the kilowatt use per hour in the total year. So the customer can feel safe that they actually have a fixed costs, meaning the contract with us, and they know then they actually only have the risk for the price they pay for the energy. They know how much energy they will use. So that's also very compelling by some of the customers. And there, as I said, there's many reasons. Also that you have single point of contact for all technical infrastructure we see is very compelling, because if there's something wrong, is it the ventilation system? Is it the refrigeration system? What if the refrigeration system is also a heat source? It's the heat pump actually for most Nordic stores. So that's by far actually where we see the most energy savings, to have that as one scope. As also Tom said, we can see the lower costs from day one in many actually rebuild of the stores due to the energy reduction. And then comes also what do the customer want to use his money on? Is it on refrigeration equipment, ventilation, lighting, or do he wants to use that capital on his property, his stores, his core business? We will always have the, let's say, the latest and the most modern technology, because we are partly independent. We have Danfoss, which of course is a technology component, but they don't make the display cabinets, they don't make the refrigeration equipments, but they are of course a huge part of our offerings to secure that we have the connectivity. And we can also have, since stores has the lead time or the rebuild of a store can come faster than the living time of the equipment. So we have very flexible setups, so meaning that we can, let's say, rebuild the store within the leasing period and still come within the concept. Just to see what's very traditional, everyone can, even if you rebuild your store yourself or you do an initiative, you can reduce the energy, but the hard part is to keep the performance. And of course, you can always argue that you can, with better engineering, better installation, better equipment, you can also lower the bar. We give that guarantee to the whole contract period. We usually have contracts period of 7 to 10 years, and with options where we can extend that to increase the living time of the equipment. But then usually we are in discussions with the customer if there also are some usually that store looks different. So when they're at end of contract, so we will do some changes or upgrades. This is usually how we present it, because today actually energy cost has become, that's more than, let's say, your interest rates, the service and maintenance costs. It's energy which is the biggest cost for you related to run the store, and that we can give a guarantee on, and we have all the others included in the monthly fee. So it's one fee for you as a customer, and to the entire contract period. And then comes to the connectivity and how can we actually do this? How can we give the guarantees? How can we make sure that we don't lose, let's say, don't lose the bet on energy use? We have a remote monitoring center here in Gjøvik, where we remote monitor every store. We have what we call an energy operations system, which is developed by us. You can see it on the right, which uses actually the graph saying how much energy should the store use before it was rebuilt or before we did something, related also to the outdoor temperature, because that's very important. A cold winter, you will use more energy than a warm winter, but was it still the right amount of energy? And then comes our system where we do, let's say, all the handling, service handling. We do the countdown and for, let's say, make the refrigerants around leakages, around consumption, around the what kind of services has been done. If a compressor fails, that risk is on us, so we will handle it. We have the uptime guarantee for the display cabinets in the store. Is there something wrong? We usually see that before the staff in the stores, so we will hopefully manage to find the errors and correct them digital. If we need a service technician out, we will send him out, and hopefully he will then also know what's wrong. So if there's a valve who needs to be changed, he will know which valve to bring. And you can see all the dots here is the contracts we had 1st of January, where the majority is, of course, Norway and Sweden. And since we opened 1st of January, our Danish office, we opened it with one contract, and we have signed a few more this year. And that's, where we see a lot of interest for the products. Also, we talk about flexible energy. That's what we're really working on these days to increase our value proposition. Our retail store is in one way a thermal battery, so we can prolong, or we can use less, or we can use more energy in a certain amount of time, because we have the store itself, but also the goods in the refrigerated cabinets, which we can then slow down or increase the amount of energy used, and we can offer the local grid, the capacity, if he needs to free capacity, or if the prices are very low, we can use more. And this store is a pilot project where we also have actually a battery connected to the store also, so we can offer even higher flexibility to the local grid owner, and actually then get paid to be the grid neutralizer in that area. We see also many customers now having a fleet of stores with old refrigerants, and they look into this concept to increase their capacity, because if you have 200 stores in your portfolio with F-gases, which needs to be rebuilt by, hopefully actually by 27, but by latest 2030, we can really offer to increase that speed, so you can transform your store portfolio within a faster time. That's also been one of the incentives from some of our customers, so we can really speed up that for them and do 200 stores in a few years. I think that was the fast run through it, Dimitris.
Great, many thanks, Morten, for that valuable presentation. We have actually a question that came in from Jan Agri. Many thanks, Jan, for that question. I'll read it out loud again. Morten, do you meet customers? Do you meet customers are concerned about lock-in effects, such as price increases over time? If so, what do you make, or how do you make them comfortable with your offers?
Well, we agree on a fixed price for the entire contract period. So that's that consists of the price increases we actually can give. And then we have the risk actually to subcontractors for, let's say, if the service hours increases, usually we also then have a back-to-back agreements on that. And then for the financial part, that we also usually have a mechanism. So if the national interest rates goes up and down, that also varies the prices. So I would say an as a service is not a lock-in, especially since we are neutral to the part, let's say, if which contractor or which, let's say, refrigerated cabinets do you use, we will always use the best and available for the best price.
Yeah, and I see it as well, like typically if a customer purchases a system, there is also, of course, indirectly a lock-in for that customer if he purchases it, because they wait to have a ROI on that system. Of course, yes, they have the ability to sell it in case it's easy to do so, but it would be the same in your situation. So for instance, we've seen of contracts where there is the opportunity to purchase the equipment, even if they are within energy as a service contract, and then basically it means that the customer has this almost this trial period to see how energy as a service fits for their operations, right?
Yes. So there is always the clause, so you can kind of buy back the product in year 1 or year 5 if that's what you want to spend your money on, or you see that this was not as if we can't handle what we promised.
Right, absolutely. That makes sense. And actually, so another question that came in was, how much can you reduce the energy consumption in a store by moving to energy as a service or refrigeration as a service from an AO perspective?
That's of course varies on the store's layout from, let's say, what technology it has, how it's been operated. But we usually see that we can reduce the energy by 20% by optimizing the setup and how we run it. And that's 20% over a time period. So it's because we will always monitor it. We see that we have a high effect on that during the, let's say, the last years in the contract. But we have had contracts where we have reduced it by more than 50% if we rebuild the store entirely, and it's done by our specification. And so it will always vary, but we see 20% is very common even for a portfolio of stores.
Great, thanks, Morten. Excellent. Well, many thanks for your presentation. I'll jump into the common Q&A section of our webinar. And actually, I see a couple of interesting questions that were asked at the last as Ton was finishing his presentation. So I'll take the opportunity to jump directly on that one. There was a question from Giovanni, which I think also applies to both of you, Ton and Morten. So the question is, insurance and take-back schemes. Can you highlight issues and steps for moving to product as a service?
I'm trying to understand the question. So I understand the words, of course, of insurance and take-back scheme. But maybe I should simply start with how we typically deal with the light as a service. So as Morten already explained, we typically sign a contract where there are termination options, right? Either during the contract or at the end. Most customers typically want to stick to what they have from us. They do want to extend the contract, and they sometimes buy the product because there's not that much sense for them in giving it back. So I have never had an issue linked to insurance from that perspective. The other thing that I also acknowledged in the call is that there is sometimes the opportunity to do remanufacturing. Then you need to take stuff back, right? The challenge there is to have a donor site and a destination site that you can sync, and because just like in the second-hand market, you need to have a source and a destination. That's something which is relatively new in our business, in the lighting business, creating such a second-hand market. So we typically deal with having a customer with multiple sites. So there are both the source as well as the destination of those second-hand luminaires.
Great, many thanks, Ton. And a question that comes to my mind for both of you, Ton and Morten, in case you look at a system and the system is coming end of its life, how easy is it? I know it's very different systems from Signify and from Aneo Retail, but how do you manage this this end of life of the system?
Well, again, typically the end of life means that you have already extended the contract, not so much with financing, because financing is covered typically in 5 to 7 years. So let's say after 10 to 15 years, you have reached really the economical lifetime of a certain product. And then we have options, right? We can take it back. But typically before that moment arrives, they have basically acquired already the assets because it makes a lot of sense for them to do so. So we rarely end up in a situation where we take something back.
I think that's the same for us also, that at the end of lifetime of the equipment, there is you know, either you have already bought it as a customer and you actually close the store for us, or you actually need to invest to keep the store alive. And you know, you can of course do it the traditional way if you want to do that, but all we have seen is that when they first gone for as a service, that's also usually a strategic choice, because then maybe you don't have the staff anymore to do the projects for you. So you build it with you renew your contract for that store and you rebuild it with, let's say, today's technology and today's way of doing it.
Great, thank you, Morten. And we'll have the time for one more question. I'll take the question from Carla de la Maggiora. It's for you, Morten. So do you bring circularity considerations in the products themselves that you use in your systems? Example, modular design.
Yes, we of course use the eco design regulatives for the products, but also related to how they are installed, which materials, and also which, if simple things as they only use electrical vehicles, etc. But also for how they are built, so they can have the lifespan that is required. Because traditionally it used to have a 10 to 12 years. Today we are working with 15 to 20. So it needs to be built also to handle it, and how you can change simple thing as lighting, or to change a valve, or to change a glass door. That's important factors for which products we choose. Because if I have a 10-year contract, that gives me a lot of incentives to go for the circularity setup of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Morten. And I see actually a question here that we won't have the time to answer during our session, but it connects actually to my next slide. It's a person was asking for a case study for cooling as a service in convenience stores. So here, actually, I have to check, but I think we have one case study. So I invite the audience actually to visit the website of the SET Alliance and to read through the case studies that we have there. And we welcome really like questions that you may have, or uncertainties that you have on the information that is there, or if you see that there is an information gap, do reach out to us and ask questions to us. And we invite you to follow us on the SET Alliance LinkedIn webpage as well. So I see we are 1 minute over time. So I would like to take this time to really thank our two speakers today, Ton and Morten. Thank you for taking the time and for sharing the work that you're doing at both Signify and Aneo Retail. We've been tracking it for some time, and really we invite customers out there to reach out to you and to understand how they can benefit from this approach that you're bringing forward. And we will be also looking very closely to continue having collaboration with you to understand how we can scale circularity within product as a service. So thank you, Ton and Morten. And I would like to invite the audience as well to take 2 minutes to respond to a survey that we've put together to hear your feedback on this session, to see maybe what you would have liked to hear more about or what was missing, but also to suggest suggestions for future webinars. So many thanks for this. And I take also the opportunity to mention that on the 18th of June, we'll have a webinar following up one of the topics that was touched upon today, which is the value of digitalization in product as a service and how digitalization can really unlock a lot of value for both the supplier, but as well the customer, and also, when applicable, the financier present in the picture. So we will have Advanced Services Group, TAM Turbo, and Industriality presenting. On this, I would like to close the session. And again, many thanks for everyone for joining today.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.